How to request an initial code in a pooling area. Initial code request in a pooling area. Prior to requesting CO code. The purpose of this session is to discuss the process a service provider uses to request a central office code, CO code, in a pooling area. Such a request is made through the Pooling Administration System, PAS, which is then sent through a mechanized interface for approval by NANPA Code Administration and the NANPA Administration, NAS. A CO code is identified as the second 3 digits, NXX, of a 10-digit telephone number in the form NXX, NXX, XXXX, where N represents any one of the numbers 2 through 9 and X represents any one of the numbers 0 through 9. A CO code is assigned to a service provider for use at a switching entity or point of interconnection they own or control, and the CO code is associated with a specific geographic location within an NPA in order to identify the initial destination addresses in the public switch telephone network, the PSTN. Once the service provider initiates the ordering process, it should be understood that the submission of a CO code, a Part 1 form, will initiate a timeline for activation of the numbers. It's highly recommended to first review the following web pages prior to starting the ordering process in order to ensure all the necessary accounts and agreements are in place in order to comply with industry notification intervals. This is the new service provider checklist found on National Pooling website. These are the important things to check before you start your ordering process. In order to pool, all carriers must be LMP capable and set up with the NPAC. Routing details must be entered into the BIRDS database. In order to request numbering resources, your company must have an OCN. In order to request numbering resources, you'll need to have an NRUF on file. Prior to requesting a CO code or thousands block, you must provide evidence of certification and proof of facility's readiness. Another helpful reference document is the Next Generation Interconnection Interoperability Forum's NGIF document entitled Network Routing Resources Educational Document, Intercompany Responsibilities in the Telecommunications Industry, which is primarily directed for use by telecommunications service providers as a source for understanding interconnection processes, data requirements, and data exchange processes among carriers related to network and routing resources. History of CO code requesting. The process used for the application and assignment of a CO code was developed by the industry at the direction of the Federal Communications Commission and in conformance with the procedures outlined in the CO code guidelines and the Thousands Block Administration guidelines, the CO code guidelines, and the TBAG. Prior to the Telecom Act of 1996, CO code requests were mainly sent directly to the NANPA Code Administrator, with thousands block number pooling becoming more prevalent in all area codes in the U.S. Most CO code requests are directed to the pooling administrator. Thousands block number pooling allows for sharing of a CO code amongst multiple service providers serving the same rate center. All 10,000 telephone numbers within each NXX code continue to be associated with the same rate center designation, but can be distributed among multiple service providers at the thousands block level. Federal regulations require that all carriers required to participate in pooling must request the numbering resources through the pooling administrator. So, to start the CO code request process, we'll log into PAS and choose one of the 3 options that are associated or available under CO code NXX code request, new. Request a CO code for a dedicated customer, a pool replenishment, or for an LRN. There are 3 reasons, as listed in the Thousands Block Guidelines, Section 7.5, a service provider will be requesting a CO code through the pooling administration system. One is to establish a location routing number. An LRN is a 10-digit number in the format MPA NXX XXXX, uniquely identifies a switch or point of interconnection per LATA. The MPA NXX portion of the LRN is used to route calls to numbers that have been ported. 2, to replenish the pool of numbers for the specific rate center in the area the service provider is requesting. Or 3, to satisfy the needs of a service provider's customer requiring 10,000 consecutive TNs. The example used in the video is an NXX request for purposes of establishing an LRN. At this point in the ordering process, the applicant will be unable to proceed in the request process if there is no NRUF on file for that OCN and or if there is no pooling forecast submitted. Service providers are required to submit an NRUF report on a semi-annual basis to provide both utilization and forecast data. Future training will cover the NRUF process. This screen is presented if the user is logged into NAS, and they will pick either the Create or the Modify Delete G0502 as shown on the screen. Now, the applicant will be allowed to continue assuming the applicant has been able to file the appropriate NRUF form with NANPA through the NAS system and or the Appendix 1 has been filed with the PA through the PAS system. The next step is to request the blocks associated with your NXX. For this next step, the user will be presented with a Part 1 form with many of the fields pre-populated from the user profile in Section 1. In Section 1.2, you'll need to populate the following fields. ID POI. Enter the 11-character descriptor of the switch or point of interconnection from which telephone numbers of the NXX will be served. This is the 11-character alphanumeric identifier, common language location identification of the switch POI. The homing tandem operating company. Enter the name of the company that owns the tandem to which the code applicant switch will interconnect. It's generally, but not always, the incumbent local exchange carrier that owns the homing tandem for a given geographic area. It's the code applicant's responsibility to identify the current tandem owner. The LARG Routing Guide Section 7 identifies the switches that home on each tandem. Section 5 identifies the OCN for each end office and tandem switch. It's the applicant's responsibility to initiate the process to secure an interconnection agreement with the tandem owner. And the homing tandem SILI, enter the 11-character SILI designation for the tandem to which the code applicant switch is going to interconnect. For Section 1.3, the system will be defaulted to show a total of 66 calendar days. But this can be changed depending on your needs, such as if you have a need for an expedited effective date for your new code. NANPA periodically sends out a NAMP notification explaining the effective date on the CO code assignment request Part 1 form. These notices can be found by logging into NAS through NANPA.com and selecting View Documents under the Code Administration category. Picking a CO code effective date, the 66 calendar time frame for the code effective date is based on the 21 days allotted for processing. 7 are for pooling, 7 are for NANPA, and 7 are for AOC input. This is the routing and rating details that must be entered into the Telcordia Business Integrated Routing and Rating Database System, BIRDS. If your company does not perform this service, you'll need to select a company that provides this service, which is referred to as an AOCN, an Administrative Operating Company number. The 21 days is added to the industry interval of 45 calendar days for code activation by the industry. If you want NANPA to issue a specific effective date, please indicate the effective date you would like in the Remarks Comments field located on the bottom of the Part 1 form. Section 1.3, if you want NANPA to issue the earliest effective date possible from the date your request is processed by NANPA, indicate a check in the Section 1.3 checkbox, and this will indicate 52 days from the date NANPA processes the Part 1 request. If you're requesting NANPA to issue an effective date shorter than the allowable standard time frames, and expedite is any amount less than 52 days, place a check mark in the expedite box and state AOCN letter submitted and or Humming Tandem Company letter submitted in the expedite explanation field. The necessary expedite documentation must accompany the Part 1 request. If you're serving as your own AOCN, please state, "We are serving as our AOCN and we will waive 1 to 7 days to update birds." For Section 1.4, type of service provider, pick A, the type of company, and B, type of service from the drop-down menu. For C, code assignment preferences, fill out if there are any code assignment preferences. For D, if there are any codes that are undesirable. And for code assignment preferences, it's not always possible for NANPA to assign a preferred code due to existing 7-digit dialing, as well as cross-boundary local dialing patterns. For Section 1.5, type of request, either initial or growth, and the pooling indicator. The pooling indicator will be defaulted to yes for an LRN request and pool replenishment. An applicant applying for a dedicated code would have the option to mark the pooling indicator as no. For Section 1.7, code request for new service is an optional field, and the remarks field can be populated with any notes necessary to assist the application, such as specific requested effective date for the code activation. Once the applicant hits submit, the applicant is certifying that the above information requesting NXX is true and accurate to the best of his or her knowledge, and that this application has been prepared in accordance with the CO Code assignment guidelines posted to the ADIS website as of the date of this application. After submission, the applicant will be presented with a reminder. License certification and facility readiness. A CO Code Assignment Guidelines, Section 4.2, Thousands Block Administration Guidelines 4.3.1. For license and/or certification, evidence that demonstrates the service provider has a license or authority issued by the FCC or certificate of public convenience and necessity issued by a state regulatory body to provide service in the city and state rate center, MSA number, RSA number, MTA number, BTA number, national /LATA. The SP may attach a copy of the FCC license or authority or a CPCN to the application. And the facility readiness, appropriate evidence that facilities are in place or will be in place to provide service within 60 days of the number resources activation date. Evidence shall be provided with the Part 1 application. Review the types of requirements that do vary from state to state located at the NANPA website. Within 7 calendar days of submission of the Part 1, the pooling administrator will notify the applicant via a past Part 3 suspension that the request has been forwarded to NANPA. Then, within 7 days of the suspension, the applicant will receive a Part 3 email from NANPA notifying of the disposition of your request. Note that there are numerous responsibilities as a code holder that begin once you've been provided your new assignment via the Part 3 notice. These responsibilities are outlined in Section 4.2.1 of the TBAG, and it's very important to review all these responsibilities. Some of the basic responsibilities are highlighted in the next slide. Next steps upon code assignment. Once assigned, the code holder must ensure AOC input of the CO Code Part 2 data entry into BIRDS, specifying routing and rating information for the pooled NXX assignment within 7 calendar days of the issuance of the Part 3. It is the code assignee's responsibility to arrange input of Part 2 information in birds. The 45 calendar day nationwide minimum interval cutover for birds will not begin until input into birds has been completed. This means if there's any delay inputting the routing information within 7 calendar days, the effective date will automatically be rescheduled to ensure the 45-day notification to the industry. If the LURG effective date is rescheduled, this will have no effect on other timelines that begin with the assignment of a code. For example, when a code's assigned, the Part 4 form confirming the code has been put in service is due to be submitted no later than 6 months after the original effective date of the assignment, regardless if that effective date is subsequently changed. And ensure loading of the NP NXX into the NPAC database, as well as successful call-through testing, will need to be completed in order to confirm the code has been activated in the PSTN. Also note the code will need to be loaded in the NPAC as well as completing successful call-through testing to confirm the code has been activated in the PSTN before the confirmation of in-service form can be submitted. If the NXX was requested to establish an LRN, submit the 1000th block guidelines Part 4 application for each block that was assigned from the NXX. This will confirm the block in service and allow the pooling administrator to then forward the Part 4 PA to NANPA, also via the interface, to confirm the NXX obtained to establish the LRN has been placed in service. Also, the Part 4 confirmation of in-service must be submitted no later than 6 months after the original effective date of the code. If the code holder fails to return the Part 4 confirmation with this time frame, the code is considered delinquent, and the code holder will no longer be able to submit the Part 4 directly into the system. At this point, the code holder will have to apply for an extension directly to the State Commission or to the FCC in the case the state does not participate in the reclamation process. A list of reclamation contacts can be found both on the NANPA website and also on the National Pooling website. Ongoing responsibilities. Submit the semi-annual NRA Form 502 and the semi-annual thousands block pooling forecast. An NRA Form 502 job aid is located at the NANPA website. Coincident with the semi-annual NRF reporting, carriers are expected to review their inventories and shall not maintain any more than a 6-month inventory of telephone numbers in each rate center. Now that you have your code assigned, you'll need to start reporting utilization for that CO code on your semi-annual NRF Form 502 report. Even if the code has just been assigned, you're still required to report utilization on all codes and blocks assigned as of June 30 for your August 1 submission, or for December 31st for the February submission, regardless of the effective date of the code or block. So if you have a code or a thousands block assigned to you and you receive the Part 3 by December 31st, make sure you include that assignment on your utilization for the February 1 submission timeline. If you need any assistance with NRF reporting, there's a very thorough Form 502 job aid that can be accessed through the NANPA website. If for some reason you're not able to put your NXX in service, you can return the code. It is important to first ensure any retained blocks are donated through PAS, intra-ported TNs and LRNs be removed prior to returning. To return a code, you would simply log into PAS and click Code Disconnect. As with the steps necessary to build records, records also must be disconnected in the routing database as well as in the NPAC. Similar to entering routing information in BIRD system within 7 calendar days of receipt, the service provider must also disconnect schedule in BIRDs. The code will remain associated with the service provider until the effective date is scheduled. Only at that point can the code no longer be associated with the service provider.